We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Ready to start your GLP-1 weight loss journey? It's never been easier. With Whole Health RX by The Vitamin Shoppe. Visit Whole Health RX for access to highly effective weight loss solutions, transforming countless lives every day. With no insurance required, choose from doctor-trusted Ozempic, Mounjaro, compounded semaglutide, and more delivered to your doorstep. See if you qualify for quick approval to reach your healthiest weight ever. Explore Whole Health RX, including important safety information about risk for thyroid C-cell tumors at www.vitaminshoppe.com/GLP-1 weight loss.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to continue our projections of the Orioles roster by going over the pitching staff. Earlier this week, we broke down the Orioles lineup and went around the horn as we projected the seasons for their position players. We're going to do the same tonight with the pitching staff, including their possible starters as well as their bullpen arms. And that'll be on tonight's episode of Orioles on the Verge, which is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, to NHL and UFC, BetOnline is the number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Now, to this point, the Orioles have not gone out and acquired a top-of-the-rotation arm this offseason. They have filled some spots lower in the rotation, but the top of the rotation right now is still sort of an open question for this team. And if they go into the regular season with this group, your opening day starter probably will be Zach Eflin, who was excellent for the Orioles after coming over in a deadline deal from the Tampa Bay Rays last year. And Eflin has been a solid arm throughout his major league career, but he took a huge step forward in 2023, his first season with the Rays. And although the 2024 season was not quite up to that level, it was still another really good year from Zach Eflin. So let's start with Eflin. We're going to see a better version of Zach Eflin in 2025, about the same, or is there going to be a little bit of regression? And I'll let Nick start this conversation.
I actually think, we see a better version of Zach Eflin, and that's saying a lot because we saw a really good version of Zach Eflin last year. I don't think he's going to be able to ever repeat the year he had with the Rays, but that's what the Rays do. Eflin's he's been a tinkerer his entire career. Like he ditches pitches, he adds pitches, he changed his arm angle, I think, a little bit in 2024, even so I'm curious to see what changes he makes this offseason. He did just do an interview like a week ago. I can't remember where I read this, so apologies. But he talked about how all those conversations about changes to his arsenal, his usage, all those conversations about what changes they want to make for 2025 are being had with the Orioles right now. I'm sure they'll implement something new. The Orioles already, not surprisingly, made his cutter way more effective after the trade. The curveball wasn't nearly as effective last season as it's been in the past, so maybe that's an area that they can improve on. I don't think he's going to have a 5-WAR season like he did with the Rays again, but 3.5, 4-WAR season, contract extension in 2025 all sounds pretty good to me for Zach Eflin.
Yeah, I would love like a 2 or 3 year extension on top of 2025 right about now for Zach Eflin. Sounds about perfect for everybody involved, but we'll see what happens there. If you just look at his numbers with the Orioles after the trade, in 55 innings, he had a 2.60 ERA. I think he's going to regress from that because his FIP was a little more than a run higher than that. So I don't think that good luck will go. But I think he'll pretty much stay the pitcher he has been the past few years outside of the 5-WAR season, like Nick said. Oopsie has him throwing 177 innings at 3.92 ERA with 2.7 WAR. I think he'll do a little bit better than that. He doesn't walk anybody. Orioles are going to tinker, like we've talked about it. They made some changes, like drop the 4-seam fastball versus lefties and only throw sinkers. I don't know. They made some changes along those lines last year, and like Nick said, I think they'll continue with Eflin and all their pitchers to just make slight adjustments to improve them. We have great pitching development here in Baltimore. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But yeah, I think Eflin, around a 3-WAR player, mid to like a 350 to 375 ERA, 180 innings. Let's go. Workhorse. Extend the man.
Yeah, I think we're going to see about the same as we've seen in the past from Eflin, which is a really good pitcher. I think a full season of Zach Eflin is going to make a bigger difference than people realize. And while I agree he's probably not going to pitch at the level that he did after the trade, the projections, I think, are skewing a little bit high on the ERA. And when you look at the adjustments the Orioles can make, the cutter is a big one, and I think that's going to be a big pitch for him next year. But I'm really curious to see, do they either improve the curveball, which took a step backwards last year, or does he ditch that and throw his sweeper more? That's something I'm really going to be watching out for this year. But like Nick said, he's been a constant tinkerer throughout his career, and it has generally worked for him. So I think he's going to continue to find a way to be successful, and he'll be really good next season. Now, let's go to the number 2 starter, Grayson Rodriguez. Rodriguez last year, up until the lat injury, was having a really good year. He was a legitimate all-star candidate and was establishing himself as a really effective number 2 in the Orioles rotation behind Corbin Burns. That said, because Rodriguez has now had a lat injury in 2 out of the last 3 seasons, there are a little bit of concerns about whether or not he can stay healthy or how he's going to recover from the second injury, which it looked for a time like he would be able to get back on the mound in 2024, but he ultimately didn't. Still, to this point, we can hope for a full and healthy 2025 from Grayson Rodriguez. What do you guys think we're going to see this year? Does he continue to get better as he did last year? Does he regress a little bit, or has he maybe already kind of hit his ceiling? Which would be good, but maybe not the expectations everybody had for him.
I have heard so many people be down on Grayson Rodriguez this offseason that I really don't understand it. Comments like he can't stay healthy. Like, I get it. He's been hurt the last couple of years, but it's not an arm injury, knock on wood. Don't want to jinx that. But, I mean, these are kind of injuries that are random. Obviously, the lat injury 2 times in a row. Let's try to strengthen the lower back there or what have you. But I think people forget how young Grayson Rodriguez still is. This was the top pitching prospect in the game 2 or 3 years ago, a top 10 prospect overall. He just turned 25 years old over the offseason. I have a bold take that I was going to say for season predictions. I'll say it now and I'll repeat it then. I think Grayson Rodriguez is a Cy Young candidate in 2025. I think he's going to have an outstanding season and prove to people why he was so highly regarded coming up to the major leagues. And pitching development is a beast. It's tough. We saw it with Kyle Bradish. Like, you can be really good, show flashes. It takes a while for pitchers to really mature and get their command and their pitch sequencing right. So Oopsie has him 160 innings, 3.43 ERA, 3 WAR, I think he's even better than that. I think he's going to push for an ERA in the low threes. I think he's like a 4+ WAR pitcher in 2025. I think Grayson is going to be like, you didn't need to acquire an ace because I've developed into one.
Here's some numbers that back that up. Since Grayson Rodriguez returned from his AAA reset year before last, he's made 33 starts in that span, a 3.35 ERA, a 3.31 FIP, 25.5% strikeout rate, just a 7% walk rate, and for the old school folks, an 18-6 record, which is pretty good. So in that span, he's also ranks 29th in WAR, and he is one of 3 pitchers in the top 30 who don't have 200 innings. And he still ranked top 30 there in total WAR. Let's see. The other 2 pitchers who don't have the 200 inning threshold there are Garrett Cole and Blake Snell. I think he can, if he had 10 more starts last year, how high up that list would he rank? I think a lot higher. Obviously, top 20 in the game. Could he be a top 15, 20 pitcher in Major League Baseball? Probably. I think that ceiling is not out of question. He does have to stay healthy, of course, get more innings under his belt, but I think he could establish himself as one of the top pitchers in this game as long as he does have a full season here. And yet, I think, is he going to be like a true ace in a sense of, a true ace? I don't know. Is he going to super live up to those expectations some people had on him when he was the top prospect in baseball? I don't know, but I think he can get pretty darn close at this rate based on from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I agree. Now, let's imagine an alternate timeline where Rodriguez has a full, healthy 2024 season. He makes a start in the playoffs. You look at the numbers he was putting up before the injury, and the narrative around the pitching staff right now, I think, would be a lot different because it would be seen as the baton is being passed from Corbin Burnes to Grayson Rodriguez. That's how good Rodriguez was last year. We can run off any numbers here to fill that out, but you look at the strikeout rate, the walk rate was very good. 26.5% strikeout rate, 7.3% walk rate, a 3.66 FIP before the injury. He was having a really good year, and I think that as long as he is healthy in 2025, he's going to get even better. And I said earlier, a couple episodes ago, that I think he'll finish somewhere in the 5 to 7 range in Cy Young voting this year. And I really believe that as long as he is healthy, he will be able to do that. And now let's go with the rest of the rotation. I think we'll kind of take this in clumps with Charlie Morton, Dean Kramer, Tomoyuki Sagano, and Cade Povich. Players in much different places in their career. Morton has been around a long time. We know what we're getting season after season from him. Kramer has had his ups and downs, but generally been a solid pitcher for the Orioles in their last 2 playoff runs. Sagano, 35-year-old coming over from Japan, doesn't have the electric stuff that he had earlier in his career, but can locate a pitch just about as well as anybody. And then you have Povich, who didn't quite have the success that Rodriguez had after his AAA reset last year, but was a better pitcher his second time around the major leagues than he was that first time around. That said, we know that there are a lot of questions about Povich, particularly with the quality of his fastball. So let's just kind of take these pitchers one by one here with Morton, Kramer, Sagano, and Povich. Do we see them progressing, regressing, or staying about the same?
I can lump Kramer and Morton kind of together pretty quickly and just say they are who they are. Like perfectly fine back of the rotation arms. I do think the Orioles probably identified some small tweaks to Charlie Morton. The guy is 58 years old, so we're not making any overhaul here, but some small tweaks just keep him effective for another year and be that guy where pray he stays healthy. He's going to give you 150, 160, 170 innings maybe. Low 4s ERA, mid 4s ERA, be fine. Kramer concerns me a little bit more just because we love to feel so good about right-handed hitters rebounding and having bigger seasons because of the new wall dimensions. But what about the pitchers? And with Kramer's given up 45 home runs the last 2 seasons. That's 30th most in baseball. and that's 14 more than second most on the Orioles, which is Grayson Rodriguez, he ranks second just among Orioles pitchers there. I don't know. I do think Dean Kramer is the guy that I'm watching a little bit more closely as like a pretty significant regression candidate. And then Sugano, I got a little bit more on Cade Povich, so I'll throw Sugano in there, and then you guys can discuss Sugano. I don't know if we brought up this piece, but John Mioli, he doesn't tweet, so I completely miss his articles. John Mioli had an article about Sugano a couple weeks ago here, and he cited some other pitchers who came from overseas without high-end velocity, Hiroki Kuroda and Hisashi Iwakuma specifically. And he looked at more recent guys like Yamamoto, Imanaga, and Kodai Senga. The trend was decreased call strike plus whiff rate percentage from their Japanese numbers. And Sugano's call strike plus whiff percentage in the NPB matched Corbin Burns last year. Burns ranked second among.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Hey, Fidelity. What's it cost to invest with the Fidelity app?
Start with as little as $1 with no account fees or trade commissions on U.S. stocks and ETFs.
That's music to my ears.
I can only talk.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. Sell order assessment fee not included. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a transaction-based service fee of $100. See full list at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Orioles pitchers for reference. So if you regress that, he can probably be about Zach Eflin level of call strike plus whiff percentage this year. Basically, when you regress some of his MPB numbers, like Sugano is going to be Zach Eflin, is basically what I got from this article, but not that great. But the 50th percentile outcome that Mioli cites, Sugano is a 1.8 WAR pitcher, a 3.99 ERA. If Sugano gives me that, I'm ecstatic. I am over the moon happy about that. I am very curious to see. The point John also makes with Sugano, though, is there have been multiple examples of guys coming over from Japan without premium velocity and that elite command that Sugano has, and they have been able to craft out perfectly fine careers in the big leagues for multiple seasons. We don't need Sugano to do it for multiple seasons, obviously. He's only on a one-year deal and he's 35 years old. But I think the Orioles can extract kind of maximum value here out of Sugano in 2025.
I guess I got to start with Sugano because I was going to say I think he is going to be Zach Eflin light. Like, I don't think he's going to be as good as Zach Eflin. So thanks, John, for stealing my thunder. But I think, he's got some of the same tools. He doesn't strike out a ton of guys. He doesn't walk anyone, at least in Japan. So, yeah, he'll probably walk more in the U.S. But I think he's a guy that's going to go out there and be competitive. he's going to have some blow up games just because he's going to get over the plate too much. But I think the Orioles can tinker with his stuff and his controls enough that he'll be Zach Eflin light, which, yeah, again, I would love that. Oopsie has him at a 4.78 ERA over 146 innings. I think he definitely is going to be closer to a flat 4 ERA, but we'll see. Yeah, I agree. Morton and Kramer kind of feel like one is a older, more wiser, veteran-y version of the other. Morton, great curveball. We've talked about him a lot. I think he's going to, there is some risk there at 41 years old that it could just go. But Oopsie has him 153 innings, 4.36 ERA for a 1.5 WAR. I think that sounds about right to me. And Kramer, I think probably around the same, but at the same time, I think there's a chance he regresses pretty hard with the left field wall moving in. I know he definitely was saved quite a few home runs by that wall in his starts at Camden Yards. He's a fly ball pitcher, but I also do think that he's a tinkerer as well, and he's added that splitter that's really nice, and he's had some pitch mix changes. So let's just call it even and say he stays the same. And the last one was Cade Povich. I'm all aboard Cade Povich not being a Bradish or a Rodriguez top of the rotation type potentially, but I think he could definitely carve a role into at least cementing his part in the Orioles rotation moving forward in 2025, maybe be a middle of the rotation starter. Every Orioles pitcher, it seems like the starting pitchers prospects, when they come up, they struggle mightily, get sent back down to the minors, come back, and then they start to really show what they're capable of. And Povich, his September 5 starts last season to end the year were excellent. 27.2 innings, 2.6 ERA, 3.13 FIP, 32 strikeouts, 8 walks. I don't think that's going to be him on a daily basis or a start-by-start basis anytime soon, but that just shows you the potential that he has. So I'm a big fan of Povich moving forward.
I agree with you guys about Morton and Kramer. Morton is who he is. He's been that pitcher for a long time. He's going to give you an ERA probably somewhere in the low 4s. He'll throw 165 to 170 innings, and he'll be effective, and we'll be glad that the Orioles signed him. With Kramer, I do think that there's going to be some slight regression, but maybe not as much as some people think, because like Bob said, he is a tinkerer, and there probably are some things he can do a little bit differently with that pitch mix to have success, even with the wall moving in. And I've been on record defending Kramer for a long time, and not that I think that he's much better than people believe him to be, but the point I've made before is that I think Orioles fans are harder on Kramer than they would be if he pitched for another team, because they live with the highs and lows. They see him go out and dominate the Yankees one start and then go out and get shelled by a clearly inferior team the next. And if you just looked at his numbers when the season ended, you would think, oh, that guy is a solid 4 or 5 for a contending team, which is exactly what he is. And with Povich, I get the concerns about stuff, and the fastball didn't look great last year, but here's his numbers after he came back up to the big leagues in mid-August, after that AAA reset. 42 1/3 innings pitched, 44 strikeouts, 11 walks, a 4.25 ERA, and a 3.47 FIP. Now, he did face some bad teams in that stretch, but he also had 2 back-to-back good starts against the Tigers as they were pushing for the playoffs. He ended the season on a high note with a good start against his old organization, the Minnesota Twins. And I think that what the Orioles can do to make Povich better is find a way for him to rely on the fastball less. And he has such a broad arsenal that they can probably look to 2 or 3 other pitches to say, you know what, you're going to mix this in more. You're going to dial back the fastball a little bit. You find a way to get his ground ball rate up closer to what it was in the minor leagues. And I think that you can get, let's say 20 starts with a 4 to 4.5 ERA. That's not out of the realm of possibility. And that goes a long way towards helping you. It bolsters the bottom of your rotation, and it gives you another arm and one from the left side that can give you innings.
Yeah, I'm going to be pretty big on Cade Povich coming into this year. I think, I do think Kramer regresses. Sagano's going to regress from his NPB numbers and hopefully be a quality back in rotation guy. I think the top of the rotation does take a step forward. And here's Povich is going to step up and kind of help the Dean Kramer regression because he showed so many positives that first year. Yeah, it was league average in terms of hard contact. The 5.2 ERA came with a 4.11 expected ERA. He had a 12% walk rate in the minor leagues last year, and that was kind of a big issue. The walks, it was a rocky first inning, followed by 2-3 dominant innings after that, but it'd be like 2-3 runs he would give up in the first inning, or he'd cruise through the first inning and then fall apart in the second or third inning. He kind of smoothed all that out in 2024. His AAA numbers were fantastic. And then when he got to the majors, the walks didn't take a big regression there. He continued to only walk like 7 or 8% of the guys in the major leagues. I think he can get that strikeout rate up to 24, 25%. I think he'd be a sub 8% walk guy with a low 4s ERA, give you 170 plus innings across a full season. I really enjoy listening to people like Saris dump on Povich like every chance he gets, and then Povich goes out and shoves. Like he ditched the cutter at the end of last season and tinkered with his pitch mix, and that's what led to a lot of those numbers that you guys have rattled off. Fantastic into the season. He's not going to be that elite across a full season, but I think the organization clearly identified some changes that needed to be made. Povich successfully implemented those changes, and I think if the rotation stays as is, again, we're not forecasting trades or anything. If it stays as is, I think Povich is in the rotation. And he's a pretty strong, like, number 4 guy in this rotation. That's going to be kind of my bolder take here early on.
I like it, and I think I agree.
And I'm saying this, I'm not anti-Povich, but even when he was coming up, I did kind of have to, like, force myself to be positive at times about Povich. I've just always kind of expected him to blow up and not become who he is, despite the Orioles have had many signs over the last few years that they clearly view him differently than the rest of the league. And he is starting to show signs of proving them right. So I'm enjoying it.
I'll go now to a player that I think is probably going to be talked about a lot for perhaps the wrong reasons going into this year, and that's Trevor Rogers. Rogers broke out in a big way in his rookie season with the Marlins in 2021, but then has kind of tailed off since then, largely because of injuries. The Orioles trade for him last year at the deadline, sending Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers to Miami. Rogers comes over to Baltimore, struggles mightily after the trade, and is sent down to AAA. He remains in the organization, and he has options, but there doesn't seem to be a clearly defined role for him going into 2025. Is he going to be in the major league rotation? Is he going to be in the major league bullpen? Is he going to be in the AAA rotation? That kind of feels like an open question right now. Now, Andy Koska over at the Baltimore Banner had a really good piece about Rogers earlier this offseason and some of the adjustments that he's looking to make to get his fastball velocity back up a little bit going into this season. All of those things could help him get back on track in some form. But at the same time, it's hard to look at Rogers' track record in the last few years and feel really optimistic about how things are going to go for him next year. So with that in mind, when Trevor Rogers is in the major leagues, what is the role going to be and what are we going to see from him? Are we going to see him bounce back, or are the troubles that he had last year after the trade going to carry over into this season?
I want to preface what I'm about to say with I understand these guys are not the same type of pitchers at all, but I see 2025 Trevor Rogers being basically the 2023 version of Cole Irvin, where he's got options, so he can hide in AAA when you don't need him, but when you need him, if he's performing, I think he'll get like 10 to 12 starts for the Orioles in 2025, and I think he'll, maybe if he doesn't get the velocity back and he doesn't, like, that upside is there, but if it doesn't happen, he could still be a guy that is going to give you some 10 to 12 starts, like I said, could work out of the bullpen if you need him to, as a long man, doubleheader days. Like, I think he's a versatile guy that's valuable just to, even if he doesn't make it all the way back to his potential, and I think the Orioles think that he can. I think he'll be a guy that's just going to eat innings, about 4.5 ERA, somewhere around that, and give you some value. So not like he's going to – I don't think he's going to break all the way out and be the Trevor Rogers that his rookie season showed he could be. But I think he is a valuable arm, and disappointed as you could be about that trade, sending Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers for Trevor Rogers. I think he's got a role in this team. He's kind of like a harder throwing Cole Irvin. If that makes you depressed, so be it. But I think that's kind of what it is for now.
If I have to hear one more time how the Orioles gave up so much for Trevor Rogers, I'm going to flip my computer. They gave up a league average second baseman and a quad A outfielder. And if Rogers is that type of player that Bob just mentioned, I think you call that a success. Like, I kind of agree. I was saying like maybe around 15 starts in the major leagues, we see him and kind of in a versatile, different way, as long as the arsenal takes a step forward. He's got the more velo. And he can fix the back issues. We know that was an issue as well. But it seems like he's been at Driveline. He's working with the Orioles and Driveline to identify some real changes, like the lower body strength, I think he mentioned, was a big issue. And that was maybe leading to decreased velocity. Having his lower body wasn't as strong as it should have been. So hopefully you get there. The Orioles already started working with him, like changing up the workout routine to hopefully address the back issue. If all that does help and he can stay healthy and he gets some velo back, he's already been working with Forrest Herman this offseason where they've developed a brand new cutter that he's going to add in spring, he said. You look at the end, he ended the year in Norfolk with a 2.95 ERA, 23 strikeouts, 5 walks in just 3 starts. That's a pretty positive way to end the season. He's like top 3 for me as far as guys I am most anxious to watch this spring. Honestly, and I'm not going to let spring training. I'm going to be super critical of Rogers throughout spring training. I'm not going to let one good outing sway my opinion here of him because we know how misleading a lot of those spring performances can be. But I'm excited to kind of dive into his spring data as long as he's at the Statcast Parks. Dive into that and see what it looks like and see if we can see a better version of Trevor Rogers in 2025. But I'm cautiously optimistic.
I agree with what Bob said. I think he's going to kind of establish himself as an up and down starter who at the end of the year, you're glad that the Orioles had around this depth option, even if he never really emerges as a legitimate rotation piece during the season. I don't think he's going to make the opening day roster unless there are a couple of injuries. So I think he's going to start the year in Norfolk's rotation, and he'll be up and down during the course of the year, and the numbers will be okay. They're not going to be eye-popping, but they're going to be fine. I think what really will be interesting, though, here's a curve that I'm going to throw into this. I think that the Orioles will have Rogers in the bullpen the final month of the season with an eye on a move to a relief role in 2026. He's not a free agent until after the 26th season, at least as he's on that track right now. So the Orioles have 2 more seasons of Rogers to try to figure something out. And if they like the direction that things are going with his arsenal and they feel like there is a role for him in the bullpen, I think we see him in the bullpen the final month of the year. And we're going into 2026 talking about him as a good arm to have in a relief role. Speaking of pitchers in that mold, I'll go now to Albert Suarez, who was one of the best stories of the 2024 season. Coming in seemingly out of nowhere and becoming one of the Orioles' more valuable arms. Now, there are some troubling signs for him going into this season, mainly glaring first, second half splits. He did struggle in the second half, but overall, you look at what the Orioles got from Suarez last year, 133 innings with a 3.7 ERA and a 1.4 FWAR. Does Suarez maintain that pace this year? Does he find another gear, or does he regress?
I think he regresses more. I think you caught lightning in a bottle, and it was fantastic, and it was a great story, and he was a tremendous asset to this organization in 2024. But if he makes the roster and the Orioles think he can be valuable out of the bullpen, give it a go, sure. But yeah, the numbers, the first half, second half numbers, hard hit rate skyrocketed, home runs skyrocketed, ERA like doubled. It's tough, I think, to see Suarez kind of recapturing that magic in 2025.
Completely agree. I loved the Albert Suarez story in 2024. Like Nick said, you caught lightning in a bottle. You scouted it. You saw the potential, and he reached it. Probably his 90th plus percentile outcome. So be happy with that. I have a hard time seeing where he fits on the roster at all, which is tough to say after the season he had. I would hope maybe he's a spring training trade with another team that could use some innings or a versatile arm like him. But yeah, I think regression. But if you're able to hide him somewhere, it's not bad depth to have.
Yeah, I think you're going to have some regression here. Right now, I think Suarez makes the opening day roster, but that opinion could quickly change if the Orioles add another starter between now and the beginning of spring training. I think that he avoids the Austin Voth type progression. Remember that Voth was really good for the Orioles in a similar situation in 2022 and then took a pretty big step backwards in 2023. I don't think Suarez goes back that much, but I also don't see him coming anywhere close to what he did last year.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like aloe or skins, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. With Shop Pay, that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts are going abandoned and way more sales happening. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whatever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Skins uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This is a mini meditation guided by Bombas. Repeat after me. I'm comfy. I'm cozy. I have 0 blisters on my toes. And that's because I wear Bombas, the softest socks, underwear, and t-shirts that give back. One purchased equals one donated. Now go to bombas.com/listen and use code LISTEN for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/listen and use code LISTEN at checkout.
And now let's look at the rest of the bullpen, the mid to late inning relief options for the Orioles. You've got 3 lefties in Cionel Perez, Keegan Aiken, and Gregory Soto. Perez has not been able to recapture his 2022 excellence in the last 2 seasons, but overall has been a solid option. Keegan Aiken delivered on the promises of a 2023 season that didn't see him have a lot of time in the major leagues. Mixed results when he was up there, but good peripherals. 2024, he took a big step forward and became one of the Orioles' more dependable bullpen arms. Soto, meanwhile, came over in a trade for the Philadelphia Phillies. And if you want to talk about giving up too much in a trade, that was perhaps it when the Orioles dealt Moises Chase and Seth Johnson to get Soto. And the early returns were not good. But after a couple of rough outings, Soto settled in and was pretty good for the Orioles over the final month of the season. And as of right now, he figures to be one of the left-handers, or perhaps the left-hander, who gets the most high-leverage late-inning relief opportunities for the Orioles this season. So looking at those 3 options, Aiken, Perez, and Soto, what do we see from them in 2025?
I'm high on Soto. I think he's going to have a great season. I think he's the exact type of reliever the Orioles love, and we know who that is. Great stuff stats be damned, stuff, and we can get you to throw it over the plate enough to make it work. I'm big on Soto. Aiken, I think it's underrated that they were able to get through 2024 without using an option year for him. So he has an option year in 2025 now. That's big because the bullpen crunch is real with a lack of options in a lot of places. So I think Aiken is valuable and that he can pitch multiple innings every time out. There could be a case to be made or an argument to be made if he was on a different team that didn't want to use him as a multi-inning reliever, that you could give him a shot at starting again, just because it seems to be a thing teams are doing. I think he could be a candidate for that for someone else, but not for the Orioles, luckily for us. I like Aiken. I think he's not going to be as good as he was in 2024, but I do think just multi-inning reliever option is valuable. I think he'll be solid. A little bit of a regression candidate, but nothing too extreme. And Perez, I know he's a guy people love to debate about, but he does not give up home runs. He gets ground balls. They get through a lot of times, and the strikeouts aren't where they were when he was at his best in 2022. So I'll say he'll stay about the same and make people angry, but still be a pretty decent pitcher.
I think Soto better be good. That's going to infuriate me if he's not. My thing with Perez is I think if this bullpen stays as is and is healthy and everybody's filling their new role, I think Ciano Perez kind of stays the same, and he's just the super low leverage, guys on base, your starter gives up a guy or two on base and it's time to yank him. You bring him Perez, get the double play, go hit the showers. Like that's all you need him for. You keep him out of high leverage situations and he's going to be perfectly fine. With Aiken, I do think there's going to be some regression here. That was a monster season from Aiken. 31% strikeout rate is huge. What was the walk rate? 6% walk rate. It's that's maintains what he's done. But the strikeout rate went from 24% to 31%. Opponents hit just 188 against him. Like, I'm glad. I'm happy for him. Former second round pick in the pre-Michael Elias era, and to see him find his home in the bullpen. I still remember, I don't know how many years ago it was, but I remember seeing the notification that he had been optioned to AAA, and we're like, he's supposed to be in the rotation. We've come a long way from there. I do think he regresses as well. And he's still effective, but he's not pitching as well as he was last year. And you're fine with, if you need to send him down to AAA for a couple of weeks while things shake out, you're okay with that. No one's freaking out about sending Keegan Aiken down to AAA because he regresses a little bit to more, above league average. But
does he regress his jersey number to 47 though?
A whole different discussion. But yeah, I do think he's still going to be effective, but not nearly as good as he was last year.
Yeah, I do think Aiken regresses a little bit, and we were talking about Dean Kramer as the possibility of the wall moving in. Last year, Aiken's home run to fly ball rate was 9.8%. He's always been a fly ball pitcher. That's never going to change. I do think he's going to be affected a little bit. Maybe not to the extent that Kramer is because he's not going to have as many innings, but you're going to see that number go up in the wrong direction. I think the strikeout rate will come down, but overall, you're still going to get good innings from Aiken. And again, with that option, you're going to be glad to have him around. Perez, I think we know who he is at this point, and I agree with Nick that the more low leverage situations you can put him in, the better. He's a ground ball specialist whose main thing is not giving up home runs. And you can feel comfortable putting him out there with runners on base in the middle innings and having him get a double play to get you out of the inning. Soto, I think, puts together a nice year. I don't think it's going to be an eye-popping year, but I also think the Soto we saw down the stretch is closer to the pitcher that he's going to be on a season-over-season basis than the pitcher who struggled immediately after the trade and who had kind of peaks and valleys in the first half of the Phillies. I think that overall Soto is going to give the Orioles fine production across the year. Now, we'll look at the right-handed pitchers. Sir Anthony Dominguez, the newly acquired Andrew Kittredge, and Yennier Cano. Dominguez was solid for the Orioles after coming over in a separate trade from the Phillies that sent Austin Hayes up to Philadelphia and managed to emerge as the Orioles closer when Craig Kimbrell completely melted down in the second half last year. With Felix Bautista, who we're going to talk about in a moment, coming back, Dominguez probably isn't going to have as many save opportunities this year, but could be a useful arm as the Orioles try to ease Bautista back into the closer's role. Kittredge, a veteran reliever coming over as a free agent, maybe he has not approached his best season, which I think was in 2021 with the Rays, in a while, but he still gives you good production year in and year out. And then with Cano, he followed up his All-Star 2023 season with a solid 2024, though it did seem like he was running out of gas a little bit in the second half, mostly because of a high workload. So what do we see from these three pitchers, Kittredge, Dominguez, and Cano in 2025?
I think kind of what I talked about last week when we talked about Kittredge signing. Kittredge is going to allow Brandon Hatton in this organization to kind of play strategically more with the eighth inning. And because we know Kittredge has those lefty-right splits, struggles against righties or lefties. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm losing it. But Kittredge, you can play these guys more effectively. Dominguez doesn't have the extreme left-right splits. He proven that he can pitch at high leverage, even close games for the Orioles. So I think that's going to be a huge benefit here and allow Yennier Cano to go be like the seventh inning guy. And you don't have to use him as much. You can mix him in. Again, if you need Kittredge or Dominguez to have a little break and it's a good matchup, you can throw Cano in the eighth. He can do it. But I just think that it's all these guys, like I said last week, you're depending on a lot of guys being healthy. But as long as they are healthy, these guys are going to find their roles that they're better suited for and see stronger performances overall, I think, in 2025.
Completely agree. I think Sir Anthony Dominguez, you don't want him as your closer. I think the long ball is too much of an issue for that, but I think he's great as a seventh, eighth inning guy. Andrew Kittredge, we just talked about him recently. I think a little bit of regression just because I think he outpitched his peripherals last year, but he's going to be able to go out there as long as he's healthy. Seems like pretty much every other game, every third game. So I like him. And Cano, I think that's the most valuable of having Dominguez and Kittredge in the bullpen is Cano can go back to being the 2023 fireman where sixth inning, you're in a jam, use him there. Ninth inning, someone's not available, you need someone to close the game out, use him there. Just use him wherever he's most valuable, get the ground balls, great stuff. I think Cano's the big winner in the right-handed side of the bullpen.
Yeah, I think Kittredge, there may be mild regression, but not a significant one. He's still going to put together the kind of season we're used to seeing him have. Dominguez, I agree. I think he's in the right place at the right time with Bautista coming back. I expect a pretty good season for him. And I'm going to go optimistic and say that Cano actually has a nice rebound this year. It's not going to go back to all-star level, but there's a couple of factors behind that. One is what you guys both touched on, which is that now that you have Kittredge and Dominguez in the bullpen and Felix Bautista coming back, you can be a little bit more strategic in the way that you use Cano. And I think you can also see his workload reduced a little bit this year, which is going to help. The other thing, too, is that I look at his numbers last year, and there's some things that kind of surprised me. They weren't apparent at the time, but his strikeout rate went up by 3% last year, but his walk rate also went up by 5%. So I think the walk rate settles into a happy medium. Last year was at 9.6%. I think it gets down closer to what he did in 2023, was at 4.6%. So let's call it like a 6.5% walk rate this year. Strikeouts might go down a little bit, but his bread and butter is the ground ball. It's being able to induce soft contact, get ground balls, and that ties into my next thing, which is that his home run to fly ball rate last year was 18.2%. That's on the high end of being unsustainable. That number is going to come down this year. So I think that Cano is going to be sort of a pleasant surprise in the sense that, yes, maybe he doesn't go back to that all-star form, but the bottom is not going to drop out here, and he's going to be a little bit better than he was in 2024. Wrap up now with Felix Bautista, who's coming back from Tommy John surgery. And before he hurt his elbow in August of 2023, Bautista was not only establishing himself as one of the best closers in baseball, but he was a legitimate Cy Young candidate when he went down with that injury. And it has sort of felt like ever since then, the Orioles bullpen just has been a little bit out of place. They managed to get through the rest of the 2023 season. But knowing that the patchwork solution they had for the final month were not going to work in 2024, they went out and they signed Craig Kimbrell. We all know how that ended. Now you're going to get Bautista back, and while all indications publicly are that the Orioles want to ease Bautista back into the closer's role a little bit this year, he is healthy. It does look like he's going to be ready by opening day. He should have a full spring training. So what can we expect from Felix Bautista this season? Does he go back to being the elite level closer that he was before the injury? Does he look good but not great, or is there some regression coming?
I think he's going to be a little bit more closer to 2022 Felix Bautista. 2023 was an unbelievable season for sure, but I mean, nearly 3 WAR, a 1.48 ERA, 46.4% strikeout rate is absurd. I think it's going to take him some time to settle in. This is a big guy, a lot of moving parts. He's a powerful pitcher. We know that. I'm just thinking about Bautista honestly makes my stomach hurt because I'm scared to death about him not returning to form, not even returning to 2022 form. That is a legitimate fear of mine. And if he crumbles, so goes the bullpen. Everything we just talked about all falls apart. It's not do or die because, like you just said, this team did put the pieces together and find success in 2023. 2024, what year is it? Last year. But a lot is hinging on Felix Bautista, the mountain becoming the mountain again. I do feel optimistic, though, that he can at least the floor be 2022 Felix Bautista. And I just love this bullpen. Like, to put a bow in the entire bullpen from my point of view, a fully healthy bullpen, I truly love this bullpen. And we didn't even talk about Colin Selby tonight. Shout out Randolph Macon. Like, Selby, the depth, they've brought in these fireballer guys to sit in Norfolk. You got some of these prospect depth arms that we've talked about over and over again. The bullpen is honestly one of my favorite parts about this entire roster.
I agree. I'm a big Selby fan myself. Felix Bautista, I'm not worried about the stuff coming back too much. 29 years old, believe it's his first Tommy John, so stuff should be okay. It's that command control part that I'm slightly worried about, but Oopsie is not worried. They project a 2.67 ERA over 62 innings, 62 appearances, 1.4 WAR, 2.94 WHIP, 36.2 strikeout rate, 10.5% walk rate. So, yeah, that'd be amazing if he was able to come back and do that in 2025. I'll say it's way too easy not to say he's going to regress from his 2023 numbers just because he was like the best relief pitcher in the world. So a little bit of regression. Hopefully he'll get better with the command control as the year goes on. Very interested in his spring training as well as Trevor Rogers. Those are like the two pitchers where it's like I at least know what I'm looking for when we're coming into spring training here in a month or so. So, yeah, Felix Bautista could be the linchpin in how good this bullpen could be if he's able to return to mostly to his form of 2023. But I'm excited to have him back on the mound, give Adley some hugs. Maybe that's what Adley was missing last year in the second half. He was getting depressed. Didn't have the Felix hugs when closing games out. So those will be nice to have back.
Camden Yards was not the same without Omar's whistle. I think that killed the vibes last year, honestly. But Bautista, what I expect is you're going to see regression from 2023 because that level of production is hard for any pitcher to sustain. But I think that overall you're going to be satisfied with the year Bautista has, especially because I think he will get better as the season goes on. I wouldn't be shocked if April and maybe May are a little mixed results. The command doesn't come back right away. The stuff looks good. And overall, he's successful more often than not. But it doesn't look entirely like the Felix Bautista we saw pre-injury. And then I think in June or July, it's going to click, and he'll be really dominant in the second half. That's what I see coming from Bautista is slow start to the year, command issues early on, but then he irons that out as he gets further into the year and finds another gear in July and August and puts together a really nice final stretch run to the season. And with that, that does it for this look at the Orioles pitching staff. We've now taken a look not only at the pitching staff, but the position players earlier this week and forecasted the 2025 season. Of course, we still have some offseason before pitchers and catchers report to Sarasota in a little less than a month, and we will be back next week to talk about all the latest news in Birdland. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and Blue Sky. We're also on YouTube and at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up to become a member today. We are in the midst of our top 50 prospects countdown, and you can have access to all episodes in the top 50 countdown if you sign up to the $3, $5, or $10 level and become a paying member of our Patreon community. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.
And if you're a young Orioles fan, we're on Twitch. Whatever that is.
Correct. Go find us over there.
Hey, Fidelity. What's it cost to invest with the Fidelity app?
Start with as little as $1 with no account fees or trade commissions on U.S. stocks and ETFs.
That's music to my ears.
I can only talk.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. Sell order assessment fee not included. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a transaction-based service fee of $100. See full list at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
This is a mini meditation guided by Bombas. Repeat after me. I'm comfy. I'm cozy. I have 0 blisters on my toes. And that's because I wear Bombas, the softest socks, underwear, and t-shirts that give back. One purchased equals one donated. Now go to bombas.com/listen and use code LISTEN for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/listen and use code LISTEN at checkout.
Ready to start your GLP-1 weight loss journey? It's never been easier. With Whole Health RX by The Vitamin Shoppe. Visit Whole Health RX for access to highly effective weight loss solutions, transforming countless lives every day. With no insurance required, choose from doctor-trusted Ozempic, Mounjaro, compounded semaglutide, and more delivered to your doorstep. See if you qualify for quick approval to reach your healthiest weight ever. Explore Whole Health RX, including important safety information about risk for thyroid C-cell tumors at www.vitaminshoppe.com/GLP-1 weight loss.